Billy Joe Padden, 3-12 to 17 points to Derry in the end here in the Athletic Grounds. An historic win really for Derry, and we could see the scenes here on the pitch afterwards and really what it meant.
It means a whole lot to the Derry supporters. They're lingering here on the pitch, enjoying every minute of it. The weather is beautiful as well, so they're, I suppose, having a great time reminiscing maybe about great Derry wins of the past. But this one goes right up there with all those important wins when they were going on to win Ulster and an All-Ireland title before. I think it's even more impressive that they back up a big performance against Tyrone and are able to come in here when they're not really, not so much an underdog, or definitely not a surprise package, and they back it up with maybe an even better performance, and that's hugely impressive, and that's something I know that their supporters are very proud of. And Monaghan supporters, having talked to them after the game, can have no complaints. Derry were the better team throughout. And it's just hugely impressive, and it should give them a lot of confidence. And I think it'll waken up a lot of the GAA public to say, well, you know what, Derry are a serious team. You kind of saw them in the National League doing some good things in Division 2, and you always knew they're improving. You maybe didn't think they were going to improve this quickly, but on the evidence of today and a couple of weeks ago, they're a force to be reckoned with.
And in that first half, they really came flying out of the blocks. Almost Monaghan didn't expect it. And I think it was 13 minutes before they really got on the scoreboard. Derry were just too tough to really get by at that point.
Yeah, I think it was the intensity that they played with in that period. They were really intense. They got loads of bodies back and then created some great turnovers. Completely frustrated Monaghan. Monaghan, there's a lot of talk about their talented forward line. There's no doubt it is talented in Mohan and McManus and McCarran. But they just didn't give them any space, bottled them up at every time. And the thing that really impressed me about the Derry performance then in that first half was the counter-attack, because it was absolutely clinical. Whether it was McKinless driving down the field, turning inside Darren Hughes and blasting the roof of the net. The second goal, another great counter-attack, totally different type of goal, long ball played in top, and I think it finds its way to Benny Hearn and a real composed finish. He had an open goal, easy one, but that was the most impressive thing about it, in that the way they broke out of that defensive shell and scored, and that's hugely important when you consider if you're a team that wants to get bodies back, and at times they'd full 15 players back inside their own 45 and they frustrated Monaghan, but if you can't attack and score out of that position, it's nearly useless to you, because all you're doing is drawing pressure upon yourself. They had some severe difficulties in both halves in terms of on their own kick-out. Monaghan won an awful lot of possession, but it was just their ability to get everyone back. Such hard work rate to get everyone back and then tackle. And they showed pretty good discipline. All right, they gave away a lot of frees, but they didn't give away the goal chance. That's the key thing.
And every time they had an opportunity, they seemed to take it. Yes, they had a few wides, but not near as many as Monaghan, and I think that was the difference.
Yeah, and I didn't mention McGuigan as well, particularly in that first half. He was absolutely clinical, got a mark, a couple of points from play, kicked his frees. I think it was even more evident in the second half when you look at Paul Cassidy got two excellent scores. I think they scored 1-5 in the second half. If they had 6 chances, that was probably it, or 6 counter-attacks. They created that. Maybe I think they had another chance that could have got a goal, but they were absolutely clinical in each attack. Emmett Bradley comes on and runs practically half the length of the field and kicks the first point of the second half. So even though they were under severe pressure from Monaghan being really frantic, being really intense in that second half, not really showing the know-how in terms of creating those scoring chances, the impressive thing was Derry's ability, when they got the counter-attacking chance, to actually make it count. And it was, as I said, Cassidy with those scores, Emmett Bradley, and then the key goal as well. Again, Benny Hearn shows brilliant composure, lovely use of his hand to bounce the ball back away from the pressure, and it got a bit of deflection, but it's found its way to the top corner. Great goal.
And that game plan you're talking about from Derry, you need the fitness levels, and I was a bit worried coming into that second half, will they be able to keep this up now? And they absolutely were, because it's not easy to go straight from defence to attack and to be clinical as well.
Yeah, and I think it was a lot of those power plays that they knew they'd be under pressure, but they knew that when they'd get the breakout, that they had to make it count, and it had to be. And I remember saying to you at one stage, Joel, that's a set piece move from a kick out when they're under pressure, where Conor McCluskey, they find him in open space on the right wing and he drives up the field. And it was a great save from Rory Gallagher. It could have ended up in the back of the net, but he was fouled just before that, and it's a free, and McGuigan kicks it over the bar. That was a counter-attack that came all the way from their goalkeeper, and they made it absolutely count. It could have been 3 points, but they got at least one out of it. And that's hugely impressive, hugely impressive.
And McKinless, you mentioned him there, he was really impressive throughout the whole game. The first half goal was his, and I asked him just there, talk me through it, and he said, we worked on that in training. It was very much straight from the training pitch to the pitch here today.
Well, he's shown that dynamic ability in the game against Tyrone as well, and it looks like we're going to see a lot more of it. He's a very talented player. But even aside from that, in the second half, there was a couple of times late in the second half where he might have drove 30 yards out of his own half, and I think at one of them he gave away a free, but it takes valuable seconds off the clock and just shows that he has that ability to break out of defence. And you think, a modern Gaelic footballer, how valuable is it to have a half-back that has that killer pace, that killer ball-carrying ability to drive it out of his own half, and he has that. So I think he's one of the most exciting players in this year's championship so far, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in an Ulster Final.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, I started full back, now I'm centre half back, who knows where I'll be. But he said, look, I'm just delighted to be out there and doing everything he can for the team.
And it's that ability that he has to break out of defence. And it's obvious, Rory Gallagher has to get credit in that. If you're a defensive team, as I said, you have to be a good counter-attacking team. So he's obviously given McKinless, McCluskey, even from cornerback, that licence. When you break, don't be afraid to go all the way. And he did, and he no stopping, kept going all the way till he found himself in the penalty spot, and he rifled it home. And McCluskey the same way, a shot on goal from cornerback position. So that's about knowing how to counter-attack properly, and that no hesitation. Absolutely no hesitation in anything Derry did today, and that to me shows a team that's absolutely clear in their thinking, have a clear idea of what they want to do, and a well-coached team.
A lot of confidence and well coached. Rory Gallagher, we watched him here on the sideline. You're laughing. He was animated. He's always animated. It's nothing new, but it's just so entertaining to watch, isn't it? It's just pure passion.
It is. I thought Jurgen Klopp was famous for the fist pumps at the end of games, but at one stage there were 10 minutes to go. Rory was turning to the Derry supporters behind him, fist pumping, and it was great to see. I loved it, and I don't think there's any sort of thing where it's rubbing any supporters up the wrong way. It's just him showing how into the game he is, and he's totally into it. I was kind of watching, thinking, crikey, how is he so passionate and intense about it, yet has to keep a cool head to make the right decisions at the right time? But so far it's working out for him, so he's obviously able to compartmentalise those two things.
And I asked a few of the players there, Chrissy McKay, what the difference is over the last number of years. He's been around a long time in the Derry shirt, and he's finally getting these big wins. And he said 2 words: the management. Everybody's buying into what they're saying. You can see it out on the pitch. They're definitely buying into what they're saying. They're very clear on what the game plan is and what they want to do.
That's clearly obvious. When you get buy-in from the likes of Chrissy McKay, who's great club footballer, a long time with Derry, then you have Brendan Rodgers as well. Both of them were outstanding today. Really helped and snuff out that talented Monaghan full forward line. And I think that's a really good example of how Rory Gallagher can communicate. Because sometimes you don't always get those older players on board. It's easy sometimes to get an impressionable young player and get them in and to do all the things you want to do. But he's obviously got not only a game plan, a way of preparation that they're all buying into, they're all happy with. Because they all are doing the right things. They're so coordinated in what they're doing. And that's from the experienced players to the young players. And that's, again, to Rory Gallagher's credit.
And now to turn our attention a little bit to Monaghan, where do you think it went wrong?
I think it was wrong with the overall strategy. I think today, against a team like Derry, who were always likely to be cagey early on, always likely to get lots of bodies behind the ball, I think it's very difficult to play 3 inside forwards in a game like that. I think you have to be a bit more patient. I think you probably have to leave an extra body back. They did get caught out there on some of those counter-attacks. If they'd sacrificed one of those players on the full forward line and played them around the middle, would they have been as vulnerable to the counter-attack? Probably not. Wouldn't have found themselves in as much one-on-one defending as they did, because Derry were very good in the one-on-one situations. And I know I mentioned the goals, but there was other one-on-one situations where points were scored. So you think of like McGuigan got a couple of those in the first half. So I think if they were to do it differently again, I think they'd be more ready for a cagier opening to the game, maybe saved one of those full forwards as a substitute to come on and try and create an impact, play an extra body in the midfield, particularly when they were playing up the hill here in the athletic ground, maybe with a slight breeze, into a slight breeze. I think they would have just been more cautious, tried to ensure they didn't concede the goals, maybe go in at half time a bit closer, not chasing the game.
And they had a lot of ball. They just couldn't really break down that Derry defence, and that was really the problem. They sort of were relying on frees a lot of the time to keep them in the game.
They were, and we were laughing in the press box because at one stage, all 30 players were inside the Derry 45. It happened a couple of times, and I was giggling away to myself. Rory Beggan had pushed himself that far forward that he was inside the opposition 45. it's very hard to create any scoring chance in that situation. It's nearly the only way you can score is by an outside shot, and unfortunately some of their outside shots didn't work. I remember Niall Kearns having one he probably should have got. Carl O'Connell came off the bench, made an impact driving forward, but again missed probably some of those outside shots. You really needed those when you're chasing a game against a blanket defence. If you're going to peg them back, you need to be nailing those, even though they're 45 yards out, but the ones in front of the goals, you have to hit them, and Monaghan just didn't get them. They're probably never going to create that goal scoring chance with Derry with the lead, with all those bodies they had back in front of their own goal.
And Derry go on now to the Ulster Final against Donegal. It's a massive game for them. We've seen them last year. Knockout football, it was 15 points to 16, and that day, they really left it behind them. It was theirs for the taking, so they'll be hoping to get one over them.
I think so, and I think Derry have shown marked improvement. And whether it's about again producing and putting another performance, and this will be the third time they'll be looking to do that. Donegal have a lot on tape of what they've done and what they do well. Donegal are a team that are very patient, and they'll have no problem just sitting back there if it is a kind of a cagey opening period where both teams get practically everyone back. Donegal are well suited to play that game. Great long range free taker in Michael Murphy, a goalkeeper in Patton who can play that long kick out as well, and Derry were under pressure on their kick out throughout today, so I think it'll be a bit more difficult for Derry against Donegal, but I see it as a 50-50 game. It's a great opportunity for them to win an Ulster title, and again I see it as a 50-50 game, and I'm looking forward to it.
You're not going to give me your prediction?
If I'm going to go on it here now, I haven't been that impressed with what Donegal have done so far. Like Cavan, the goals killed Cavan in that game, so why not Derry?
Yeah, I think that Donegal, they might not be able to handle the defence that Derry have, the way they tackle, the intensity, they're dogged in the way they do it, and I think that might show up a small bit in the Donegal game. It
will. I suppose Donegal are reliant on some great counter-attackers themselves, and Owen Ban Gallagher and Ryan McHugh, and I'm sure Rory Gallagher, he knows those players so well, and if you think he's pumped up on the sideline here against Monaghan with his history in Donegal, he'll be pumped up on the sideline as well, and he'll have a plan in place for those players. He knows them inside out, so you could see some key matchups there that he'll prepare for, but again I think on the Donegal, on the other hand, will know the importance of McKinless and McGuigan to Derry, particularly in that first half. So they'll have a plan in place for those two players. So I think it'll be a real tactical battle. And in each of those tactical battles so far, Rory Gallagher's come out on top. So I think advantage to Rory.
And overall, have you been enjoying the championship so far?
I have, yeah. I think the Ulster Championship always throws up some surprises. I think sometimes when you look at the Hurling Championship, when they play so many games against each other, I get a bit envious, and I wish that we were playing more often. And it's a real frustration when a team gets knocked out and they don't play a qualifier game for 5 or 6 weeks. So I think I would like to see teams play a couple of games every 2 weeks. I'm sure the players would like that as well. But we've had some good Ulster Championship games, and hopefully we'll get a good final as well.